My fiancé is a police officer, and my sister-in-law, she's a lawyer. Well, you might be wondering why the heck I'm asking you this. It's because Karen, my stepmom, physically assaulted me, and so did her little daughter, and there's something I need to tell you about this crazy dynamic. I'm pregnant when this all happened. My father got married to another woman while my mother was still alive. I'm the only child of my parents, and we used to be one happy family till I was 8 years old. That's when my mother discovered that my father, whom she held in high regard, had cheated on her. My mother did not waste time deliberating her next move. She filed for divorce and walked out of the marriage, leaving me and my dad to focus on her business. Her reason was that she had been taking care of me in the house, which was why we had enough time to go, cheating outside. She said she felt that he would sit up and do better if she was out of the picture. My mother's theory somehow worked because I don't recall seeing my father bring women to the house ever since my mother left. Well, what would an 8-year-old know at that time anyways? I never knew what he did outside the house, and I was angry at both my parents. My anger towards my father was based on the fact that his secret lifestyle led to my mother moving out, while I was angry at my mom for letting my father's actions take her out of my life. Anyways, I tried being considerate as I grew up. I could not hold grudges forever because we're all humans, and who doesn't make mistakes amongst us? 10 years later, I turned 18 and was about to get into college. I knew going to college would affect my dad, as he would not have anyone around the house, so I began encouraging him to remarry. My father did not want to toe that line again, but after I made him see the need to, he began searching for a wife. It did not take long before he met my stepmother. My stepmom had never been married before, but she had a daughter called Alicia from her previous relationship, and yes, I initially raised an eyebrow when my dad introduced them to me, because I did not know it was the best idea for my dad to marry a lady with a grown-up daughter almost my age. My fears were dispelled as my stepmom and stepsister began making conscious effort to get close to me. They involved me in their day-to-day and even went as far as seeking my opinion during the marriage planning. We did not just make plans for the wedding, we made plans for life after the wedding, and the whole thing was super cool, to the point that I could not just wait for the wedding to take place and we started living as a family. I think the problem started a few weeks before the wedding when my mother, after 10 years of absence and silence, showed up at the house. My stepmom and Alicia were around that time because we were making some adjustments to the plans, and my dad was with us when there was a knock at the door. Alicia, who was already getting herself acquainted with the house, got up to attend to the individual at the door. She opened up the door, but all she did was turn back and stare at my father and me. We asked what the issue was, and she finally found the words to say that a woman who claimed to be my mother was at the door. I'm sure that she did not have any doubt in her mind about a woman at the door being my mother, because the resemblance was absolutely striking. Alicia gave away from my mom to walk in as she spoke with us, and my father immediately jumped to his feet upon seeing his ex-wife and asked her to leave. My mother noted that she was there because of me, but my dad would not give her the opportunity. He told her that I was doing well and did not need her in my life, and he promised to get a restraining order against her if she ever showed up at the house again. After my mother left, my father explained to my stepmom all that happened and assured her that my mother was not going to be an issue as we were both done with her. Well, I was not done with my mother. So, I met with my father after my stepmom and Alicia had left the house. I explained to him that even though he was no longer with my mom, there was nothing wrong with if they remained friends for my sake. I made him understand that they were both my parents and I still needed them in my life, and besides, if he never broke her trust by cheating on her, she would not have left in the first place. She was not even asking for his forgiveness because he had wronged her to start with, and she just wanted a chance to be present in my life again. My father reasoned with me and extended an invitation to my mother. My mother came to the house for lunch, and she and I had made both she and my dad bury the hatchet. Even though she had never remarried and was not considering it, she noted she was happy for my dad. My mother's business, at least, was booming, and you could say her departure 10 years ago had paid off. I knew there was still work to be done. I wanted to establish a cordial relationship between my dad, stepmom, and sister, and my mother. My life would revolve around these people, and I did not want to be playing sides. I just informed my stepmom and Alicia the next time they came to the house that I'd successfully made my parents put their differences aside to properly co-parent me. My stepmom and stepsister did not have any issues with it, and even commended me for forgiving and accepting my mother. I went ahead to tell them that I had arranged for my mother to come to the house for lunch by the weekend, and I wanted them to be there so they could properly be introduced. Alicia and her mother had no issue with that, and they claimed to look forward to it even. So, my mother came for lunch and was properly introduced to my stepmom and Alicia. The whole thing went well, and my mother even promised to financially support my stepmom and my dad's wedding. It was nice seeing these things play out so well. We all looked forward to the wedding, and the wedding finally took place, and my stepmom and stepsister finally moved into the house with the father and me. So, the newest couple just went for a 1-week honeymoon at a resort. After they returned, I tried discussing with my stepmom about some of the post-wedding planning that we need to execute, but she noted it was being taken care of by Alicia. It felt odd because we were a team, or so I thought. I met with Alicia to get updated about the progress, but Alicia brushed me aside in such a subtle manner, so that I could tell both she and her mother were now trying to shut me out. There was no other explanation for their distant attitude, and I kept my observations to myself, and I did not let them make me relate to them differently. My mother came to the house one day to pick me up as we had an appointment that day. We were trying to catch up on lost times, and I ushered her in and went to finish my makeup while she sat at the parlor waiting for me. I was still in the process when I heard my stepmom's pitched voice from my room. I rushed to the parlor to see what was happening, only to meet my father sitting my mother out at the house, with my stepmom drumming support and calling my mom a homewrecker. I tried inquiring what happened, but neither my dad nor stepmom, or even Alicia, was willing to talk to me, so I ran after mom. My mother told me that my stepmom had walked up to her while she was waiting for me, and told her to quit coming to the house. She asked her to keep away from her father, and if she desperately wanted to see me, she could do it outside the home. My mother wanted to know why her presence was suddenly not welcome anymore, and that's when my stepmom raised her voice and starts to create a scene. My father got there and demanded that my mom leaves the house after his wife had claimed my mom was acting hostile towards her. So, I was met with my stepmom the next day to see if we could have a reasonable discussion about what went down. I wanted to know if my mom had altered any, truth that she told me. My stepmom said the exact same thing that my mother had said, and even accused me of trying to help my mother invade the family to take over her place. She noted that she was aware of our, quote, scheme, the moment I convinced my father to establish a cordial relationship with my mom. But she decides to play the fool till marriage was done, and I knew then that both she and Alicia had been pretending to be okay with the arrangement all along. I was still in the process of figuring out what to say when my stepmom warned that I was never to invite my mother to the house, and her name was never to be mentioned. This was madness. I did not hide my displeasure, and I approached my father later in the day to express my unhappiness. He told me that he had remarried just as I advised him to, and it was his duty to prioritize his wife over any other person, including my mom. He noted that he did not want anything to jeopardize his recent marriage and the peace that he was enjoying, and so appealed to me to comply with what my stepmother said for peace to reign. Okay, well, I tried my best possible stuff to ensure that I did not clash with my stepmother or her daughter, and the fact that I got into college shortly after helped me a lot. I spent most of my time in school, and even when I was at home for holidays, I split my stay between father's home and mother's place. My father did not treat me badly, and even though my relationship with his wife was not great, I appreciated the fact that she gave me happiness, companionship, and of course comfort. It was a win-win situation. So, I got pregnant with my lover Edison a few weeks after I graduated from college. Edison was a cop, and yes, he lived a pretty average life. I did not know what to make of the matter. After contemplating getting rid of the child, I finally opened up to him about the situation of things, and he insisted we keep it. He knew there was every possibility of me facing ridicule for getting pregnant outside of wedlock and decided to get married to me at once. I told my mother about the situation, and though I expected her to be disappointed in me, she rather understood. She said the most important thing was the fact that Edison had acknowledged the pregnancy and was willing to get married to me. Oh, I brought to my mother to the house and stand beside as I broke the news to my father, stepmother, and daughter about the pregnancy. The moment my stepmother laid eyes on my mom, she began ordering her to leave. My father supported his wife till my mother told them that she would not show her face at their home if the situation did not warrant it. So my father was compelled to give my mother a listening ear, and the wife followed suit. My mother, however, was not the one who spoke. I tried so hard to count my words, as though I would still arrive at the part where I was pregnant. The moment I told my dad that I was a few weeks pregnant, my stepmom jumped up and began running her mouth. She began telling my father that her suspicion all the while that I spent most of my time in school was true, after all. I never knew that my stepmom had been telling my father all along that I was sleeping around, and my mother, who probably knew, was in full support of my actions. She said that the fact I've gotten pregnant just a few weeks after my graduation meant I'd known the person before I graduated. In fact, well, she was right. My father was shocked and just looked at me. My mother asked his wife to shut up till they heard me out. So she went on to tell my dad that my lover was willing to take full responsibility and had decided to get married to me after the child was born. He would, however, formally get engaged to me before then, and my stepmom immediately jumped right in and starts telling my dad that my mother would support me, and she was sure my mother was the one enforcing the marriage thing to cover my shame. Even if that was the case, is it a bad thing for a mother to cover the shame of her child? If it was her daughter in my shoes, would she let her face the situation by herself? My mother, who was already irritated, warned my father's wife to keep quiet or she was going to get the beating of her life. My father intervened. He noted that while he was not in support of a lady getting pregnant outside of wedlock, I was a full-grown woman and I could simply take responsibility for my actions. His verdict was that since my lover was willing to get married, I was to bring him home. His coming to the house was not to check if he was a suitable match, it was just a formality to know the person who has gotten his daughter pregnant. I officially brought Edison to my family, and my father gave his blessing while my stepmother looked for any reason to be not available that day. My mother called me later on to her house and asked if I loved Edison and would get married to him without the pregnancy in the picture, and I told her yes. She decided she was going to support me to the fullest. Edison was planning a small engagement party for me, but my mother insisted she did the planning. The party was nice, and my stepmother and Alicia were not there, but it didn't matter. The surprising part of the party was when Edison pulled out a ring and placed it on my finger. It was surprising because the ring was a diamond ring, and I was wowed and had questions because Edison was a police officer whose paycheck could not afford this. I felt he probably hired it and would replace it later with one of the lesser values, but Edison noted that it was mine to keep. So, I inquired later on, and he told me it was given to him by my mom. I approached my mother, and she said it was gifted to her by a man whom she, should have gotten married 2 years ago, if death had not snatched him. I made sure to flaunt my diamond ring before my stepmother and her daughter, and my dad spoke with me about Edison's source of wealth, and I knew it's because of the diamond ring. I told him how the ring had come about, and Edison and I were making plans for a moderate wedding before the pregnancy got its advanced stages, but he met with me yesterday to ask that we put the whole marriage on pause. I could not tell why he was acting the way he did, and he didn't want to say. He only said we canceled the wedding plan till the child was born and we could decide if we truly wanted to get married after that. I tried making him understand that I loved him regardless of the baby, but he claimed I was just saying so because I was pregnant. It just seemed odd. I could tell he had heard something from someone which pushed him to make the decision he just made. I cried at my mother's house yesterday as so many thoughts were just going through my mind. My stepmom had mockingly said one time that, quote, these poorly raised boys would get girls pregnant with the promise of marriage and hope of a family, but they would just jolt. Because all they needed was a woman who would give them children without them being fully committed. I was scared that my stepmom's words were going to be reality in my life. I was. My mother reached out to Edison and he maintained his absolute stand. For some reason which I could not figure, my stepmom was trying to call me since yesterday and I don't know why. I don't know how I'll be able to look my father in the face and tell him that the marriage would wait till after the child was born. I knew my stepmom and her daughter would take a great delight in me seeming fortune. Well, I would go back home soon because they're bound to discover the truth sooner or later. Update number 1. Hey guys, I broke the news to the family, and you can't trust my stepmom and her daughter to be the heartless folks that they are. I got home and I wanted to take a pause before telling my dad about it, but my stepmom, of all people, asked about the progress of the marriage plans. This is someone who refused to be present during Edison's introduction to the family and my engagement party, and I went on to inform them that no marriage would be taking place anymore till my child was born. My father asked the reasoning. I told him my fiancé had thought it's best that we wait. My stepmom immediately laughs and said that Edison was now trying to avoid a lifetime commitment, as he knew it would be a bad idea with me. She then said that I was now drifting to the next phase of my life, becoming a single mother while living in my father's house. She and her daughter busted out laughing. I ran to my room crying, while my father rebuked the both of them. My father would later try comforting me, but the words of my stepmother rang strong in my clear ears. I locked myself up for days, as though I was going through was not enough. My stepmom called for a family meeting 2 months later, and she surprisingly invited my mother. We were all seated in anticipation of what could make my stepmom throw her doors open to my mom. My stepmom began her speech by saying that it seemed we would be having a marriage celebration after I dashed their hopes in pieces. I ignored the statement, and my mother's anger was already brewing. My father asked her to, make her words plain. Alicia was the only one who spoke up by saying that a responsible man who has not yet slept with her was asking for her hand in marriage. Her mother cut in by saying that Alicia could not get pregnant out of wedlock as she had trained her very well. Tears were streaming down my face, and my mother, who could not stand it, immediately asked my dad to put a leash on his wife and stepdaughter, otherwise all hell was going to break loose. My mother's warning did not stop my stepmom from running her mouth. My stepmom told my dad to throw me out of the house to go live with my father of the child, so I don't bring embarrassment upon him. My father immediately rebuked them, and the rebuke was timely because my mother was almost launching at them. The meeting ended in a ruckus with my mother asking me to come live with her, and I would be going to stay at her place for the next 3 days till I go to bed. At least Alicia would have gotten married and moved to her husband's house by then. Update number 2. I'm making this update from the hospital, where the doctors have been fighting to save my life and that of my unborn baby. I was sent here by my stepmom and her daughter Alicia yesterday. It happened just yesterday while I was putting my things together and getting ready to stay with my mother when Alicia walked into the room. She politely greeted me, and I wondered what she was up to because we were not on talking terms the last time I checked. Well, she did not come for war, so I extended an arm of peace by politely responding to her greeting. Alicia began talking about how she did not want it to seem like they were chasing me out of my father's house. I knew her statement was just mere talk. She and her mother were happy that I was moving out, and her mother did not hide the fact. I was eager to see where all this talk would go to lead, and Alicia then disclosed her reason for coming. She said she wants to borrow my diamond ring to take some photos and upload them on her social media post, and I did not have any problem with her using my diamond ring to chase a bit of clout over the internet. But hey, her next comments put me off. I'd agreed to give her the ring, and in fact I'd already handed it over to her when she said that I could as well forgo it since my marriage to Edison was likely not going to hold up, even after our child must have been delivered. I demanded my ring back right then and there. She refused to give it to me, and I asked why I had picked a fence because she had pointed out something true. I told her that even if I were not going to get married to Edison, I would not give her my diamond ring. A struggle ensued between the both of us, and Alicia found herself on the floor within seconds, screaming aloud, and yes, her mother came rushing in. The moment Alicia saw her mom, she accused me of beating her up because she had asked to use my ring for pictures. My stepmom accused me of wanting to kill her only child because of a ring that was not going to be used by me after I've even given birth. The fact that she spoke with such certainty about my future was vexing. I told my stepmom that it was my diamond ring after all, and if her daughter so needed one, she could ask her fiancé, who, quote, was a responsible man that had not yet slept with her, to get her a diamond ring. My stepmom gave me a dirty slap, and a fight ensued. Alicia joined forces with her mom, and they seriously beat me up, and Alicia left with the diamond ring. They left me on the floor in my room, and there was no help as father wasn't around. Alicia took pictures with my ring, uploaded them to her social media handles, came back and threw it on me while I was still in pain on the floor. I managed to gather myself up after a while, took a cab, and headed to the hospital where I literally passed out. I've been at the hospital since yesterday, and I just called my mom to tell her where I am. Guys, she's on her way to come see me. Update number 3. My mother's currently housing my father in a surprising turn of events. Are you ready for this? After my mother got the hospital to see me, she was horrified as I explained to her what happened. She was raging about she was going to do certain things to my stepmom and her daughter when I noticed I was bleeding. I called her attention to it, and she rushed off to call the doctors. I was subjected to a series of testing, and the results was that I had lost my baby. I was inconsolable. My mother, in a fit of rage, called my father and asked him to come down to the hospital as it was an emergency. My father gets to the hospital, and my mother transferred the aggression, which she had built up for my stepmom and Alicia, to my dad. She told him that his wife and stepdaughter had successfully beaten my unborn child to death and endangered my life in the process. My father was shocked at the story that he heard. In his defense, he said he never knew I was in the hospital for the past few days. According to him, he had come back home and asked about me, but Alicia and her mom told him that I'd probably gone to my mom's place, and I said I would. There was no mention of a fight at all. So my father immediately left the hospital in a fit of rage. My mom and I suspected he was going to make his wife and stepdaughter feel his wrath, but he promised to check up on me before I was dismissed from the hospital. I get discharged the next day, and my mother and I were leaving for her house when my father finally showed up. He had some scratch marks all over his face. My mother did not care about his predicament, but I was concerned, so hey, I inquired about what happened. My father noted that he had gotten to the house and queried his wife and stepdaughter on why they would physically gang up against me. Their response did not help matters, and my father demanded they leave his house. Alicia and her mother absolutely refused. My stepmom and Alicia now violently ganged up against him and called the cops after they had inflicted some marks on him. The cops came, and duo changed the narrative to be that my father attempted to assault them and they had to defend themselves. My father was detained but let out on bail. He was now denied access to his own house, and my stepmother had promised to electronically send him the divorce papers within a week. Well, I had to plead with my mother to let my father temporarily stay with us till he got a place. Update number 4. Alicia and her mom have just been detained. Denied bail at the police station where they were being detained. I tried reaching out to Edison all the while I was at the hospital, but it was not possible. It was the day we left to go to my mother's place that he came down to the house and told us he had been down with a fever. He said some of his colleagues called to his attention that a man, matching my father's description, was initially detained, and I broke the news of the fight and the miscarriage. And Edison's reaction was the same as everybody who had a working conscience and heard the wickedness of my step-siblings. Edison opened up to us and said the reason he had put the marriage plan on hold was because my stepsister Alicia had visited him with a claim that I was only getting married to him because of the pregnancy. My father explained his situation, and Edison was overwhelmed by the whole thing, and he wanted to storm my father's house and arrest both of them. But my mother advised that we did not make any rational decisions because it was their word against ours. Edison got in touch with his sister, who's a lawyer. After listening to us, she said I could sue Alicia, her mom, for battery and temporary seizure of my diamond ring. It would not be Alicia's word against mine because the images which she posted on social media on the day of the attack, it showed that she had my ring on her finger, and even if she went ahead to claim that I willingly gave her the ring, the hospital recordings would show that I was hospitaled on that very day with bruises which resulted from physical assault. Edison's sister had shown us the path to victory, so we moved to the next plan, storming my father's house to get them arrested. My father, mother, and I were the first to arrive at the house, but Alicia and her mom refused to open up. They were busy running their mouths when the cops led by my fiancé drove in and broke down the door. Alicia and her mom were told I sued them for battery and theft they claimed the police were misinformed by me. Well, Edison's sister was with us, and she noted that there was a sample evidence to put them behind bars for a very, very long time. My stepmom insisted on her innocence because she felt it was their words against mine, but when the facts were made plain to them to the station, they immediately started pleading for mercy. My would-be sister-in-law has advised that I let my father use their plea to his advantage, and that's what we did. Alicia and her mom are being offered a reduced sentence if my stepmom agrees to a divorce without any form of settlement. Edison and I have started, the wedding plan again. Even though we lost the child, things are equally going great for my parents too, as I suspect that they're going beyond the bounds of peace to establish some kind of intimate relationship. The stepmom divorcing OP's dad has to be the icing on top of the cake. This story was very twisted, it had a lot of toxicity, a huge family drama dynamic, but the craziest part about today's story, in my opinion, is when I was reading the comment section from the original post, all the updates. Guys, it seems like this sort of story actually happens a lot in the real world. There was people saying, yeah, I've been through the same thing with my stepmom, my stepfather, my sister-in-law, even step-siblings, and I just couldn't help but think, how much does this really happen? If you guys have ever experienced anything like today's story, just drop it down in the comment section. If you want to share it, I would love to read your experiences and just chit-chat in the comment section. My name's Mr. Reddito. Thank you once again for joining me. Hit that subscribe button for daily drama stories. And just remember one thing, please. It's cool to be kind. I'll see you tomorrow.